If you listen to Joe Rogan's podcast regularly, you will realize he often brings on guests that reveal things that are shocking. However, nothing prepares you for the bombshell he recently revealed about a shocking underwater discovery made by Russia. What has Russia discovered in the water and why is it so shocking? Stay tuned as we bring you Joe Rogan's terrifying underwater discovery. Joe Rogan is host of the Joe Rogan Experience, one of the most successful podcasts on the internet. The podcast features long, unfiltered conversations with guests from various fields such as politics, science, comedy, sports, and entertainment. Rogan discusses topics ranging from current events to personal stories, often challenging conventional wisdom and expressing controversial opinions. The Joe Rogan Experience attracts millions of loyal listeners who appreciate Rogan's honesty, curiosity, and humor. According to Nielsen, his podcast reaches an average of 11 million people per episode, surpassing the viewership of many cable news shows. In 2020, Rogan signed a $100 million deal with Spotify, giving the streaming service the exclusive rights to his podcast. The deal was a testament to Rogan's influence and appeal in the media landscape. Rogan has built his podcast empire by being authentic, passionate, and engaging. He's not afraid to say what he thinks or ask tough questions. He is constantly learning and exploring new ideas. He is not bound by any ideology or agenda. He is simply a man having conversations with interesting people and inviting his audience to join him. And one of the topics he has tackled is the popular discovery known as the Baltic Sea anomaly.
Are you familiar with the object that they found at the bottom of the Baltic Sea?
Recently?
Yeah, very recently. Yeah, big. It looks like a Millennium Falcon. It looks like, if you took the Star Wars spaceship Millennium Falcon and put it in the bottom of the ocean.
It is an arm of the Atlantic Ocean that lies in northern Europe and is surrounded by 9 countries: Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Germany, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Russia, and Sweden. It is also linked to other bodies of water by man-made canals such as the White Sea-Baltic Canal and the Kiel Canal. The Baltic Sea is a young sea established around 10,000 to 15,000 years ago as the previous glacial period's ice sheets retreated. It is also a brackish sea, which means that its water is a mix of fresh and salt water, with salinity levels fluctuating depending on location and depth. The Baltic Sea covers around 377,000 square kilometers or 146,000 square miles and has a volume of approximately 21,700 cubic kilometers or 5,200 cubic miles. The deepest area of the Baltic Sea, the Landsort Deep, has an average depth of 55 meters or 180 feet and a maximum depth of 459 meters or 1,506 feet. The Baltic Sea's hydrography and climate are complex, influencing its biological variety and production. The Baltic Sea receives most of its water from rivers that drain about 1.6 million square kilometers or 0.6 million square miles of land in northern Europe. The freshwater input reduces the salinity of the sea, especially in the northern parts, such as the Gulf of Bothnia and the Gulf of Finland. The salinity increases towards the south and west, where the sea is connected to the North Sea by the Danish Straits. The water exchange between the Baltic Sea and the North Sea is restricted by shallow sills that create bottlenecks for inflowing and outflowing currents. The world's waters have been the source of many discoveries. One of them is the Antikythera mechanism, a Greek antique apparatus that's frequently referred to as the world's earliest computer. It was used to calculate and display information about astronomical occurrences like the sun, moon, and planet positions and eclipses, as well as the cycle of sporting games such as the Olympics. It was propelled by hand and included clock-like wheels and gears. It was discovered in 1901 in a shipwreck in the Mediterranean Sea near the island of Antikythera. It was most likely created in Rhodes in the 2nd century BCE. The Antikythera mechanism featured the first known set of scientific dials or scales, and the significance of the device was recognized when radiographic pictures revealed that the remaining components had 30 gear wheels. There is no other geared mechanism of this intricacy known from the ancient world or even until medieval cathedral clocks were developed a millennium later. The Antikythera mechanism was made of bronze sheet and would have originally been housed in a shoebox-size case. The case doors and mechanism faces are adorned with Greek inscriptions, enough of which survive to clearly explain much of the device's astronomical or calendrical purpose. A hand-turned shaft, now missing, is thought to have been connected by a crown gear to the main gear wheel which drove the subsequent gear trains, with each revolution of the main gear wheel equal to 1 solar year. On the front of the mechanism is a big dial with pointers indicating the positions of the sun and moon in the zodiac, as well as a half-silvered ball representing lunar phases. The drivetrain for the lunar position is exceedingly sophisticated, incorporating epicyclic gearing and a slot and pin system to imitate small fluctuations in the moon's travel across the sky, known as the first anomaly. This motion was examined in the 2nd century BC by astronomer Hipparchus of Rhodes, who may have been consulted in the machine's design. And the mechanism has 2 huge dials on the back. The big upper dial features a 5-turn spiral slot with a moving pointer that displays the Metonic cycle's 235 lunations, or synodic months. This cycle lasts nearly exactly 19 years and is useful for regulating calendars. And a 4-year dial displayed the dates of the different Pan-Hellenic Games, including the ancient Olympic Games. Based on the 18.2-year Saros eclipse cycle, the huge bottom dial features a 4-turn spiral with symbols indicating months with a chance of a solar or lunar eclipse. The apparatus is thought to have been devised and built by Greek scientists and has been dated to around 87 BC, between 150 and 100 BC, 205 BC, or within a generation of the shipwreck, which has been dated to around 70 to 60 BC. Later clockwork is known from the medieval, Byzantine and Islamic civilizations, but works of comparable complexity did not appear again until the 14th century development of astronomical mechanical clocks in Europe. The National Archaeological Museum in Athens today has all known fragments of the Antikythera mechanism, as well as a variety of artistic restorations and replicas demonstrating how it may have appeared and worked. But that is nothing compared to the Baltic Sea Mystery, or Baltic Sea Anomaly, a 60-meter wide unique entity with a massive disk twice the size of a football pitch was discovered by a crew of subwater explorers deep beneath the icy waters of the Gulf of Bothnia in the Baltic Sea region. This discovery in the Baltic Sea is remarkable. Because of the enigma surrounding its background, it's also known as the Baltic Sea Enigma and the Baltic Sea Mystery Object. It resembles a mushroom and rises 3 to 4 meters or 10 to 13 feet from the seabed between Sweden and Finland. Straight edges, building lines and boxes appear to be drawn on the main item. The object's massive mushroom-like top also contains fractures filled with an unexplained black material. Many have referred to it as the Giant Stone, portal to the other world, underwater Stonehenge, or alien stone circle formation created by a former civilization. The entity's unusual shape and unusually tall height of at least 13 meters have led to scientific allegations that it's an unidentified flying object, or UFO. And as a result of such claims, the disc-shaped object and its surroundings were dubbed the UFO Baltic Sea. And these allegations regarding the Baltic Sea Mystery were bolstered when pavement-like platforms were discovered stretching from the object for around 300 meters. And another aspect corroborating UFO reports in the Baltic Sea region was the inability of the explorers' electrical equipment like sonar devices and satellite phones to function while close to this mysterious creature. The enigma surrounding the entity, however, stems not from a lack of understanding about its size and shape, but from the explorers' and other scientists' failure to classify why it's at the bottom of the sea. The entity is roundish, having a radius of about 18 meters, and is submerged at a depth of around 91 meters beneath the Gulf's waters. The enigma surrounding the entity, however, stems not from a lack of understanding about its size and shape, but from the explorers' and other scientists' failure to classify why it's at the bottom of the sea. The entity is roundish, having a radius of about 18 meters, and is submerged at a depth of around 91 meters beneath the Gulf's waters. The circle-shaped device resembles the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. And although many scientists, geologists, and experts have claimed that the object could be a link in human evolution or the base of a U-boat or a Nazi ship that sank during the war, or a glacier or a glacial deposit dating to the Ice Age that appeared as a result of glacial thawing processes or post-glacial processes, none of these theories can explain why electric equipment appears to malfunction near it. All electronic equipment, according to the experts, comes to a halt near the mystery object. All of the institutes that conducted a study, including the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, the Monterey Bay Aquarium Study Institute, and Arizona State University researchers, claimed the same. Surprisingly, some specialists believe the object is not made of metal. As a result, it could not be evidence of extraterrestrial contact. There are numerous theories about it, though many hypotheses attribute it to volcanic activity on the Baltic Sea floor. Others believe it could be an asteroid or a meteorite that landed on the sea floor thousands of years ago. A black material was discovered on this buried flying saucer by an associate professor of geology at Stockholm University. Because the entire northern Baltic region was prone to thawing, he suspected it was a black volcanic rock brought to the ocean floor by glaciers. Many people believe, however, it's an alien spacecraft or a spaceship. Sunken UFOs have become popular among UFO believers. There are numerous misconceptions, but this notion cannot be dismissed. This theory is confirmed by the results of a Swedish diving crew whose video footage indicates a 985-foot runway leading to the item, similar to a stairway. A diver reported that he had never seen anything like it in his 20-year diving career and called it a missing experience. After this strange item was discovered for the first time and preliminary results to learn more about the UFO-shaped object were unsatisfactory, additional study excursions were conducted. The original group of subwater explorers, along with a number of other worldwide scientists, conducted a series of research operations to understand more about the true origins of the UFO-like object discovered at the bottom of the Baltic Sea. Researchers conclude that there was once vibrant geography that was submerged under a flood of water and went unnoticed until the explorers discovered it. And another conclusion was reached on a German ballistic object falling in the depths of the Baltic Sea during the height of the Second World War. This explanation has gained credence with many scientists, researchers, and war specialists endorsing and advocating for it. And yet, despite extensive investigation, the Baltic Sea mystery remains a mystery. However, considering the significance of the water body in context, the uniqueness of the concept of UFO Baltic Sea becomes a key aspect, delivering invaluable attention to the issue of the Baltic Sea mystery, therefore countering skeptic comments about its actual existence. Another interesting find, a shipwreck that is hundreds of years old, was found in the Baltic Sea, raising the question of how these types of finds are so well preserved at the bottom of this particular sea. During a regular survey of the Trava River in the northern German city of Lübeck last year, divers uncovered the remains of a roughly 400-year-old wrecked ship from the Hanseatic era. It was a wonderful find for the city and a vital testament to its own past. The partially exposed wreck poses major erosion risks, and divers have observed shipworm infestations in the exposed areas. As a result, the city government has finally opted to save it. Now, wreck finds in the Baltic Sea, according to underwater archaeologist Florian Huber, are not rare. Estimates suggest that there are between 10,000 and 100,000 shipwrecks in the Baltic Sea. However, the discovery of the wreck is noteworthy for two reasons: its location in the western Baltic Sea and the fact that it dates back to the end of the 17th century during the peak of the Hanseatic city's marine trade. Scientists don't know that many ships from that period. From a scientific standpoint, such a discovery is particularly exciting because you can learn how ships were built back then, what technology was behind them, according to Huber, who's been investigating the world's waters since 1992. And he believes the 150 or so barrels discovered on the Lübeck ship are equally significant historical evidence. We learned something about the cargo that was being traded at the time. The Hanseatic League was a commerce and merchant city network that stretched throughout northern Germany and along the Baltic Sea. The Hanseatic League was a medieval association of North German towns and merchant communities that formed to protect their mutual trading interests and dominate the commerce of northern Europe. from the 13th to 15th century CE. The term Hansa is derived from a German term that means guild or association. The League was a loose confederation of numerous parties that collaborated on commercial problems and shared common laws and privileges, rather than a centralized and formal organization. The League lacked a permanent administrative body, treasury, or military force, instead relying on member discourse and consensus. The League's influence stretched from Estonia in the east to the Netherlands in the west, and it maintained trading posts in many towns and cities across Europe. The League's prosperity was built on its access to a wide range of commodities, control of important trade routes, technological advancements, and the ability to enforce blockades and conduct wars on its adversaries. Internal disagreements, external competition, political upheavals, and economic crises all contributed to the League's collapse. The League gradually disbanded throughout the 16th and 17th centuries CE, finally coming to an end in 1669. The Hanseatic League dates back to around the 12th century CE, when German merchants and towns formed alliances to enhance their mutual interests in trade and security. These alliances were prompted by the natural interdependence of trade in the Baltic and North Sea regions, as well as kinship relationships between merchant families with prominent positions in towns. The coalitions also sought to protect themselves from bandits, pirates, feudal rulers, and foreign competitors who posed a threat to their commercial enterprises. In the 13th and 14th centuries, the Hanseatic League grew rapidly as new cities and trading communities joined or affiliated with it. In addition, the League constructed trading posts known as contours in various sites around Europe. Some of these contours, such as those in London, Bruges, Bergen, and Novgorod, grew into extraterritorial entities with significant legal autonomy and privileges. In addition, the League established a network of commercial routes that linked its members and marketplaces. And the Hanseatic League was a political power that affected the history of Northern Europe, as well as a commercial network. The League's authority and influence stemmed from its collective economic might, diplomatic ability, judicial system, and military prowess. The Hanseatic League achieved its apex of power and prosperity in the 14th and 15th centuries CE, but it also encountered numerous challenges and difficulties that contributed to its collapse and demise. The following were the primary factors that contributed to the League's demise. Internal conflicts. The League's members frequently had conflicting interests and aims, resulting in disagreements and disputes over trade policy, political affiliations, legal issues, and military activities. Members of the League also battled for markets and resources, often establishing opposing fractions or subgroups. Members of the League also resented Lübeck's domination and intervention, which attempted to impose its will and power on the rest of the League. External competition. Other nations and areas that built their own trade networks and industries opposed the League's trade monopoly and advantages. For example, in the 16th century, the Dutch Republic emerged as a major maritime force, offering cheaper and higher quality goods and services than Hanseatic merchants. In addition, the Dutch expanded their commercial lines to Asia, Africa, and America, bypassing the Hanseatic markets. The English also increased their commerce and production, particularly in woolen cloth, which was a major commodity in the Hanseatic trade. The English also limited the Hanseatic League's access and rights in their ports and markets. And the Russians also established their own trading routes to the east, diminishing their reliance on Novgorod's Hanseatic contour. Political shifts. The advent of centralized republics and national monarchies seeking to control trade and taxation within their borders weakened the League's political authority and autonomy. Denmark, Sweden's, Poland's, and Russia's kings, for example, strengthened their power and authority over their kingdoms by placing tariffs, rules, and limitations on foreign merchants. And the Holy Roman Empire also became increasingly fractured and unstable, making it less capable of protecting and supporting the Hanseatic towns. And religious disputes and conflicts arose among the Hanseatic towns as a result of the Reformation, with some adopting Protestantism and others remaining Catholic. And lastly, economic crises, war, plagues, famines, inflation, currency devaluation, market volatility, and technical developments all had an impact on the League's economic performance and stability. But why can wrecks and other long-sunken artifacts survive in the Baltic Sea so well? There are various reasons for this. Large portions of northern Europe's inland sea are poor in oxygen, chilly, gloomy, and have a low saltwater content. The Baltic Sea is like a giant ice-cold museum, like a refrigerator that just preserves everything that falls in there. And it's not always just the wood that's preserved, but also the freight. Leather and textile remnants are frequently discovered. You can often find good, sometimes dried fish still in the barrels. You discover bones, anything organic preserves extremely well underwater. Traces of quicklime, a popular building ingredient during the Hanseatic period, were also discovered in the barrels of the Lübeck wreck. Bottles of wine, champagne, and beer have been discovered in the Baltic Sea as well. Of course, they weren't that old. They were 100 to 200 years old, but still, and they were also still tasty. The champagne was sold at auction for tens of thousands of dollars. However, the cold and darkness not only work as preservatives, they also assist in fighting one of the most vexing enemies of shipwrecks, the shipworm, Teredo nivalis. This is especially beneficial to the timber wreckage dormant on the Baltic seabed. Shipworms prefer salt water that is high in oxygen, and more fresh water accumulates in the Baltic Sea as one travels east. Because the Gulf of Bothnia around Finland and Sweden is almost entirely fresh water, there is very little salt and the shipworm can no longer survive there. That is why extraordinarily well-preserved wrecks are frequently discovered here. There are sometimes wrecks in the Baltic Sea that are 2, 3, 4, or 500 years old, and they are still standing upright with their masts. That is unprecedented in the global oceans. This also explains why the ship parts discovered in Lübeck appear to be pitted. Lübeck is situated on the western Baltic Sea. Clear evidence of the shipworm may be seen in the wreck's wooden images supplied by the city of Lübeck. However, in addition to the shipworm, wrecks face threats from climate change, fishing trawlers, and looting. And wine was not the only edible material found well preserved in the Baltic Sea. Archaeologists discovered well-preserved spices such as saffron, peppercorns, and ginger on the wreck of a royal ship that crashed off the coast of Sweden's Baltic coast more than 500 years ago. The spices were discovered in the shipwreck silt during an investigation supervised by Brendan Foley, an archaeologist at Lund University. The discovery is regarded as one of a kind and exceptional, considering spices are typically frail and deteriorate quickly in water. The spy ship was called the Gribshunden, which means griffin dog in Danish. King Hans of Denmark and Norway, who reigned from 1481 until 1513 CE, possessed the ship. With a length of around 35 meters and a capacity of roughly 150 tons, the ship was one of the largest and most modern warships of her day. The ship was distinguished by a griffin-like creature as a symbol of royal strength and authority. The Gribshunden met a horrible end in 1495 when it caught fire and sank near the Swedish town of Ronneby. The ship was part of a squadron that escorted King Hans to a political conference with Sten Sture the Elder, the Swedish regent. The summit was scheduled to settle a dispute between Denmark and Sweden over the Kalmar Union, a union of Scandinavian kingdoms founded in 1397, but which had since become unstable and unpopular. The meeting, however, concluded without an accord, and King Hans was forced to return to Denmark with his navy. On his way back, he anchored the Gribshunden near Ronneby and walked ashore for unexplained reasons. During his absence, the ship caught fire, maybe due to an accident or sabotage. The fire swiftly spread and enveloped the ship, killing the majority of the crew and guests. The ship eventually sank to the sea floor, where it lay undisturbed for generations. The Gribshunden wreck was rediscovered by sports divers in the 1960s, and various excavations have since taken place to salvage and investigate its remains. The shipwreck is regarded as one of the best preserved medieval ships in the world due to the Baltic Sea's low levels of oxygen, temperature, and salt. The shipwreck also provides a rare view into the history and culture of the late 15th century, as it contains a plethora of artifacts and materials reflecting the time's life and trade. The collection of spices discovered in the ship's wreckage was one of the most surprising and exciting discoveries from the shipwreck. Saffron, peppercorns, ginger, cloves, cardamom, and cinnamon are among the spices used. The spices have been maintained exceptionally well, keeping their color, shape, and aroma. The spices were most likely preserved in wooden barrels or leather bags that deteriorated with time, leaving just the spices. Because the spices were not native to Europe, they were most likely brought from Asia or Africa. In medieval times, spices were extremely valuable and expensive commodities since they were used in cooking, medicine, perfume, and coloring. Such luxurious items could only be afforded by the affluent and powerful, and King Hans was most likely bringing them as gifts or personal belongings. The findings of the spices on the Gribshunden is one of a kind and exceptional because it's the only archaeological context where saffron has been discovered. Saffron is a spice obtained from the stigma of a crocus flower and is one of the world's most costly spices. In medieval times, saffron was highly valued for its flavor, color, and therapeutic benefits. It was also a symbol of wealth and importance because it was used to dye clothes and manuscripts a bright yellow color. The appearance of saffron on the Gribshunden suggests that King Hans led a luxurious life and had access to exotic items from faraway regions. The discovery of preserved spices on the Gribshunden shipwreck has significant ramifications for our knowledge of medieval trade and society. The spices demonstrate a thriving and complex trading network that linked Europe with Asia and Africa, and that the Baltic Sea was a vital route for this trade. The spices also demonstrate that there was a great desire and appreciation for unusual and luxurious commodities in medieval Europe, and that spices were employed for social and cultural reasons in addition to practical ones.